trying a couple of new things today. One is new paint. Two is this video. Story time and painting. Kind of had this thought in my mind for a while, so now's as good a time as any. Go ahead and give it a whirl. I'm fairly new to painting in the last few years. So I'm sure any hardcore painters might find some issue with some of this, but don't really care. We're just playing. I'm not about to try to please anybody. Just dragging some of these strokes, long strokes, trying to drag some of this blue back down here. Maybe incorporate a little bit of that white back in there, and it kind of wets the brush again. Mix up a little bit of that color. And drags it some more. This is a picture that I found one time and I thought it was pretty, so I saved it to my phone because I was going to use it as a screensaver. And then one day I needed to do a whole bunch of paintings for somebody for a charity event. I kind of used mountains as inspiration, and this one had a mountain in it, which we're about to do. So I ended up making several of these, and it ended up being one of my favorites. The event was hiking up our mountain. We live in the mountains here in Arkansas. And there was an event for understanding, making more awareness of human trafficking. So each of the people that participated in the event got a painting, just as a little memento of what they had done. Like I said, this is just for fun. One of the things that I was talking to someone about not long ago kind of made me think about telling stories as I did this, because I have a lot of stories. I was a history teacher, so I like stories. And I also like funny things. I like to laugh. Even though this was at my own expense, So, what had happened was, this was several years ago. I was working at the high school and just not having a really good year. And my good friend at the school, she wasn't either. And we were kind of just desperate for something else to think about. And this, I don't know, may have been early October. So I Googled one day, how much is a ticket to New York City? Now that's very odd for me because I don't go anywhere. I'm just a little country bumpkin. And I put in some dates because my daughter always wanted to go to New York City when it's Christmas time. So I put in some dates and it came up with this exorbitant amount that I said would not be happening. And that was it, I thought. Well, Google came up with a little thing that said if I could be more flexible with my dates, they had some different amounts. And they came up with a round trip ticket about $200. That's a pretty big deal because from Arkansas all the way round trip, I mean, we don't have cheap tickets generally. So I went and told my friend, hey, do you want to think about doing this? And she said, absolutely. So we spent the next several weeks kind of preparing for this little trip. And then it was close to time to go. And I was trying to start packing up. Now I'm a light packer. I don't need a whole lot of things, but I'm pretty picky about my coffee. So I wanted to ensure that my coffee needs were taken care of. A little backstory, I don't do any sugary drinks or coffee creamers or anything like that. And don't necessarily like coffee. I like the idea of coffee. But I don't like a real strong taste. I do like creamer. I do like sugar-free creamer. Just kind of doing a little test over here to see kind of what these colors are turning out to be. Because like I said, this is new paint. So my creamer has become known as the Sugar-Free Creamer event of 2019 in my mind. So, like I said, I don't travel a whole lot. Do a little skosh of that too. And I don't know all the ins and outs of everything regarding what you can or cannot bring on the airplane. So I was looking it up. Now, I didn't want to bring a whole bottle of my creamer because I knew it was just going to be the weekend and I wouldn't need the whole thing. Plus, I'm cheapskate and I didn't want them to say, hey, you can't have this and we're going to throw the whole thing away, and I'd be out $3.82. So, because of that, I thought, well, I would put it in a little Ziploc storage bag. Now, mind you, this was just like sugar-free hazelnut, sugar-free vanilla kind of creamer. So, like I said, very light packer. I don't have a whole lot of things that I needed to carry. But I had sugar-free creamer in a Ziploc bag. And I was about to go to New York City. So we're flying out of XNA, which is Northwest Arkansas, to New York City. And this was my daughter-in-law. I had 2 international students at the time, so we were gonna take them on a trip to New York City. If you've ever been around exchange students, international students that are coming to a high school in Arkansas, let's just say they're pretty stunned. This is not what they expected. So we wanted to give them just a little bit of a little journey out. Like I said, all of the international students that I've ever had wanted the High School Musical experience. I mean, so many of them, they would say, that's just like on High School Musical, you know, like when they came to the high school and they saw that we had lockers and whatnot. So, but they were obviously more experienced travelers than I was because they had already come around from the other side of the world. So my luggage was going through TSA, and I don't know how, but somehow it caught the attention of TSA. So they told me just to kind of stand over to the side while they looked through my bags. Well, I'm a little bit of a nervous Nelly, so just saying that made me very nervous because I obviously didn't want to be accused of being some drug dealer, which is kind of hilarious to think about if you know me very well. I don't know the first thing about any of that. So I stood over to the side. Everybody else's bags had been fine and they got to go on through. And they were looking through my stuff, and I said, hey, this is sugar-free creamer, sugar-free hazelnut creamer, vanilla creamer. But, you know, I'm sure that's what the drug users are gonna say too. So, I had to stand over to the side while they investigated everything. Well, this was December, so they had, you know, I had to take my coat off and everything to go through the TSA stuff anyway. So as I was standing over on the side, I thought that they were handing me my jacket because they kind of leaned my jacket over closer to where I was standing. So I proceeded to reach my hands out because I always feel like I need to help anybody do whatever they're supposed to be doing, their jobs and whatnot. Reach my hands out, and the person said, I wish you wouldn't have done that. That's against the violation. You violated this little rule I didn't know about. And they said, now they have to come and search you. So I was like, what? I thought you were handing me my coat. They said, no, we were setting it over here. And now that you've reached for your coat, it looks like, I don't know. I guess I was acting very suspicious. So I had to stand over to the side. Everybody else that was with me, they were all standing there too. I said, you guys go ahead and, you know what, go on. This is all kind of embarrassing, so why don't y'all go ahead and go to the gate, and I'll be there when we get done with this, or have a nice trip. I don't know. So they were like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, please, this is embarrassing. Go ahead and go on. So the TSA person said, hang on right there for a little bit. We gotta go find a woman so she can Search your body. Okay, what else am I gonna do about this? I don't know. So, I'm dragging some of these colors over here. So, female TSA agent came up. I think anybody could tell by looking at me, I really wasn't trying to do anything wrong here, but they've got protocol, so they had to do it. Anyway, so she was patting me down and trying to make it less awkward by saying things like, cute shirt, to which I was like, oh, thank you, I got it at TJ Maxx for $7 or something like that. You know, as one does. So, of course, they find nothing on my person. We go on our way. Get to New York City. It was kind of an interesting experience with all of us, my friend and her daughter, and my two, and then my two exchange students. So kind of a funny thing out of all of that, me worried about my coffee needs, we ended up staying in a little Airbnb thing that ended up being right over a bodega, a grocery store. It was super cute. I think they said we were in Spanish Harlem or something. Anyway, right over a grocery store that kept fresh coffee made with creamer, but also I could have just saved everything and got my creamer there. Listen, when one has needs like this, they don't automatically assume that all of these things are going to be provided once they get to their destination. And I know my needs aren't as serious as someone who has maybe serious dietary needs, but in order for me to not be super cranky, I kind of want my coffee in the morning. And that's all I was trying to, I had even Googled this the night before. I Googled, what can you bring? Can you bring coffee creamer on the plane? They had like a whole list of things that you couldn't bring. I'm like, obviously the nunchucks have to stay at home. Can't bring my compound bow or whatever. Anyway, I have not been very many places at all. I've only flown just a handful of times, so I am no expert. I even have a map on my office at work that shows the places I've been, and because I've been so few places, I definitely include places where I've had a layover, because that counts as being somewhere. I'm looking at you, Nevada. We were in a Las Vegas airport layover one time on a trip back from a teacher professional development of all things. You know, that kind of doesn't go together. Arkansas to Los Angeles for this teacher training. Anyway, on the way there, we had a layover in Phoenix, and then on the way back, we had a layover in Las Vegas. My other good friend and I, we're such little Baptists. We don't have a clue about any of this stuff, but there were casinos everywhere in Las Vegas airport. And another person that had come with us, he essentially walked off the plane, went and put $20 in a slot machine and won $250. Well, my friend and I were just amazed. And so that encouraged us that maybe we should try something. So we weren't big spenders, big gamblers. So we went over there where we were trying to find some penny machines, and we couldn't figure out how to work them, and we asked the person that knew more about this, how do we put the pennies in? And he laughed at us and told us, you don't put pennies in. And we said, these are penny machines. And he said, you gotta put more than a penny in. So that kind of burst our bubble. Needless to say, you can't do a whole lot of max spins on 25 cents. But that was my time in Vegas in the layover. So right now we're just kind of adding color here because we are in a forest, in the mountains. We put a little, all this background color here. We're going to come back with a little bit more definition here in a second. The dogs are all around me. So hopefully they don't start causing a ruckus. One funny thing that we did when we went to the professional development in Los Angeles was we got on this bus that had the top sawed off. I mean, a van, tour bus, kind of a van, convertible. And we went around touring alleged homes of celebrities. And at the time, we were just soaking it up like, oh wow, Bob Barker lives there. That's Dr. Phil's house and whatnot. And then we sat in the van outside of some house where a car was standing there, sitting there running, and they were trying to convince us that Courtney Cox was in that car. And then that kind of made us feel a little bit creepy, like, wow, can't even pull up to your house without being bothered. And then later on we thought, gee whiz, what if we just gave some bozo $40 and he just drove us out to random places and tried to make us believe that these were celebrities' homes. Yeah, and we felt pretty stupid about that. Or at least I did, I don't know. Thanks for a funny story though. soften up some of that. That's just kind of the darkness of the forest here. Using this big brush here just to make things not look perfect. Because everything in nature is so unique. Dark trees in there. Looks like some pine trees too. Just on that kind of green here. Cats are running around, so at any point, a cat may jump up in the middle of all of this and scare the pudding out of me. If that is to happen, I'll let you know right away that it is Smokey Joe Handsome, because he's unhinged. And he's quite large. It's kind of funny they call this a light pink, and I would definitely call it pinkish orange. And one thing, this paint is wet. I'm trying to take some dry brushes to it and pull some of that color in a little bit. That was Shiloh jumping off the side of the couch because she thinks she's Wonder Woman. Shiloh is a Shih Tzu and she's crazy. At the end of the day though, when she gets really tired, she's super cute. Sad to say, I really like it when she's tired. She just has a lot of energy, and I do not. I have to put a pause on this and let some of it dry. Yellow in these little areas over here. I can't remember exactly what I was thinking about with this one, but probably this. New York City is wild though, I'll tell you that. My student was standing on the subway platform while we were waiting. We had been to Times Square right when we got there, against my better judgment because it was after 10 o'clock and I'm tired. But everybody else seemed convinced that this is the city that never sleeps, and why should we? So we went to Times Square. They all went and got some sort of slice of pizza, which I couldn't even begin to think about eating anything at that point. So we went around, kind of looked at all the different things. Times Square at night might as well be Times Square during the day because there are so many lights that you can't even see the darkness. Kind of weird. Anyway, my student was standing there kind of dazed off. That was a mistake. And some hobo walks right up and takes the pizza right out of her hands. And then went and proceeded to try to jump over the counter of some little stand in the subway down by the tracks, where you can just go like get some mints or gum or newspapers or whatever. I'm sure there's a name of this, but don't get me going on it. Anyway, the guy just took her pizza and ran off. That was the first night. So that was something. Took some of this different color here on this path. If you've ever seen any of my other pictures or videos, you know that we've got some farm animals, babies. We've got some geese. We've got a couple of mamas sitting on some more eggs, so hopefully they'll go ahead and hatch very soon. But almost a month ago, I was on a work trip and my first set of baby goslings hatched, And this whole time, I've been being overprotected mama about these babies, and we've had them just kind of protected in the chicken coop, and then that was a major hassle. And then we cleared out a space and gave them some areas to kind of run around on in the hay barn. But we had to leave part of the door open in order for the other geese and ducks that are sitting on eggs. They needed to be able to come and go. So this whole time, trying to be protective of these baby geese. And this morning when I drove down to feed everybody, there's the mama and the daddy and all four of those little babies out running around. So she determined that she knows best, and I hope she does. She's been a good mama. So she determined that they weren't going to stay in there anymore. So be it. The other two, we call them aunties. They were very helpful to her when she had just hatched the babies, and they were being very protective. But they each had their own nest, and I had to keep reminding them that they needed to go sit back on their nests. This is the dog getting a drink. So these two other geese that had their own nests, but they became fascinated with helping this mother goose. With her newly hatched goslings. I want you to. I know. Now the dogs are stirring. I don't know what they see or what they think they see. Funny story about the mother goose is that I got these geese last year at Atwood's, babies. Didn't even know what kind they were. We have determined that we think that they are African geese. But because we didn't know what kind they were, I had to be very careful in trying to figure out how I'm supposed to tell them apart, and if we were going to end up having at least one male in the group and one female in the group, so we could potentially have some babies, which we did. And anyway, so I had gone on all of these sites for months, trying to determine based on how the geese acted What was what? Okay? No. So, this one goose was exhibiting these behaviors that the internet said would make it definitely a male. It would get in the middle of me and the others, but it was pretty gregarious and wanted to be friendly, wanting to come get some food and whatnot. So we figured that that was probably a boy. So Jake, no. So I've got these little rings to put on their ankles so I could tell them apart. That way I could also name them. Nobody asked you, Shiloh. Hush your mouth. So this one in particular, I put a blue band around its leg because I was sure it was a male. And the way the geese acted, we call them the Rangers. And so this blue one with the blue, we called Marshall Dillon from Gunsmoke. Well, fast forward, we've got a goose sitting on eggs. We're very excited about it. We're trying to figure out which one it is. And you guessed it, Marshall Dillon ended up being Marsha Dillon. He is pretty nosy and in the middle of everything, so, I mean, she's a detective and a protector, so. So then the one that I called Laney ended up being the male. What y'all doing over there? The dogs have all of the other dogs, the baby, pinned down. This is very wet. No, Shiloh, hush. planted another round of seeds. I've planted, trying to plant some wildflower seeds. I'm just gonna put some kind of images here of some tree trunks. I don't always see what tree goes with what in the forest. You guys settle down. Knock it off. So last year, without a whole lot of effort, I threw out a bunch of wildflower seeds, and it created the most beautiful little wildflower garden. Jake? So this year, I actually tried a little harder, and what you know, every time I have put some seeds out, got a massive rain, and I guess they've washed them all away. Oh, hush. So, this time around I have some seeds I got from Dollar Tree. Marigolds. Actually some pumpkin plants too. It's probably a little bit late, but oh well. I'll give it a whirl. And then I had a huge bag of sunflower seeds, black oil sunflower seeds. And the other day I had thrown several of those out. Try to do the same exact thing. And the next morning, I saw a bunch of crows outside, so they were very appreciative of my actions. We do have rain coming this weekend, but perhaps I can get them in there enough to soak up the rain and not get washed away. Hey! You guys, that's enough. You're getting on my nerves. Alright. I'm going to put a little bit more of this in a couple of places. And let it dry. At the very end of the video, I will post a picture of what it looks like. But for the most part, this is kind of it. A little trail, the creek, the mountain in the background. That's very typical of what you would find in my neighborhood of Western Arkansas. Now I need to go straighten out a bunch of dogs.